What's up, guys? Color commentary in the NFL is an interesting beast. The broadcasters are responsible for filling the void with interesting discussion for 3 to sometimes 4 hours at a time. While commentators have been a staple of professional sports forever, traditionally it was on radio, and their primary responsibility was to provide the fans with a detailed play-by-play call. Play-by-play isn't the easiest task by any means, and it takes a special kind of talent to be able to do it in a compelling fashion. But today's color commentators have started running into a whole slew of new challenges that are unique to their profession. Because the viewers can clearly see the action as it unfolds before them, the commentators don't have to describe every last detail that's happening in the game, yet they still have to make sure there isn't too much dead air. As a result, they end up leaning on interesting storylines about players and colorful quips about the plays on the field to keep the viewers glued in on the screen. Unfortunately, 4 hours is a long time to create dialogue, even with the on-the-field action to lean on for the talking points. So what happens to a lot of these guys is they slip up and try to make a joke or two, and, well, even worse, they state misinformation that ends up embarrassing them and their network. Surely this has happened since the inception of sports commentating. It isn't a brand new issue, but because of the cultural changes in today's society and the massive growth of social media, these slip-ups now take on a life of their own, and often leave the broadcaster at the public's mercy. Depending on the nature of the mistake, sometimes the response is just a slew of jokes, or sometimes it's a collective outrage. Either way, being on the wrong side of one of these blunders is not where any commentator wants to be. Let's take a look at 8 of the worst commentator mistakes, which the gentleman in question definitely wish they could take back. Make sure to subscribe to TPS and put on your notifications. We post videos all the time. New videos all the time, subscribe. Number 8, glad I didn't go to Greg Gumbel's school. You would think that a lot of these on-air mishaps would happen to inexperienced broadcasters who are just in a little bit over their head, but that's not always the case. In fact, a lot of times it's the seasoned vets who get too comfortable and slip up. And that is exactly what happened to Greg Gumbel, who has not only been in broadcasting since 1973, but has been working in NFL booths since 1988. Not only that, but the industry actually runs in his family, as his brother Bryant was also a sportscaster. It's crazy that commentators like him have this experience and still manage to have these on-air gaffes that leave their partners and viewers scratching their heads. Now, his mishap was a little bit more mild than most of these, but still, it should not have been uttered on air. It's just not worth it.
And then Travis Kelce is throwing people around like a school teacher. That's not right.
It was a low-scoring start to a game between the Steelers and Chiefs, and he presumably saw an opportunity to spice up the game when he referred to a play that the Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce made as throwing people around like a school teacher. Really, Greg? A school teacher. Nice. It's hard to believe he didn't think that this would draw ire from viewers who were either A, school teachers, B, have loved ones who are school teachers, or worst of all, C, had traumatic past experiences in this area. His partner immediately recognizes the mistake and tries to save him, and instead, he basically doubled down on the take. Number 7, that little what? So speaking of old-timers with a bevy of experience that should know better, this old clip had recently resurfaced and made rounds on the internet. And, well, it was not met with an incredibly warm reception. Howard Cosell was one of the most prominent and influential voices in the sportscasting world and has had a number of iconic calls throughout his career. However, amongst all the gems, this one he might want to take back. It took place during the season-opening Monday Night Football contest between the Cowboys and the Redskins. This was back in 1983, after Redskins wideout Alvin Garrett recorded his 6th reception of the first quarter, and the sportscaster remarked, "Joe Gibbs wanted to get this kid, and that little monkey gets loose, doesn't he?" There was no social media back then, but the outrage still poured in pretty quickly, so much so that Cosell felt the need to dispute the racism claims being made against him later on in the contest.
According to the reporters, they were told that I called Alvin Garrett a little monkey. Nothing of the sort, and you fellas know it.
Now, there are a couple of things worth mentioning here. For starters, this was a much different time in society, and despite referring to himself as arrogant, pompous, obnoxious, vain, and cruel in the past, he was also well known for being a very progressive figure in the media. Some even argue that he didn't see people in terms of color.
Howard was totally colorblind when it came to race. He didn't care.
And that brings us to our next point. This wasn't the first time he had used the term little monkey to describe a football player. 11 years earlier, during the Hall of Fame game, he referred to Kansas City Chiefs running back Mike Adamle as a little monkey as well. And it's especially noteworthy because he was in fact white.
The outside, breaking tackle, finally stopped by Richmond Flower. You know, that little monkey, again, the theorem was that he was too small.
All things considered, I think we can give the famous broadcaster a pass in this one. it was probably an accident. But still, you've got to think that when it was all said and done, perhaps he would have rather kept the call to himself. Number 6, a Kareem Hunt joke turned bad. ESPN's weekly Monday night segment, Come On Man, is always good for a laugh. The whole thing is based on making fun of people after all. And while most of the jokes will remain timeless, this Come On Man moment sure looked bad 1 year later. During a Come On Man segment in September of 2017, Hall of Fame cornerback Charles Woodson compared an NFL cameraman to Kareem Hunt, as footage played showing the former running over a Kansas City Chiefs cheerleader.
The city's getting a lot of love these days, but look at the cameraman. Is that Kareem Hunt or the cameraman?
Now at the same time, that joke was pretty harmless. But then in November of 2018, footage resurfaced of Kareem Hunt kicking and assaulting a woman during an altercation at a Cleveland hotel back in February of that year. Hunt was subsequently released by the Chiefs and placed on the commissioner's exempt list. So Woodson's once perfectly fine joke turned pretty sour just 14 months later. He probably never imagined it would turn out like this, but I'm sure Charles wishes he could take that one back. Number 5, this one got away from Gus Johnson. During his prime, Chris Johnson was one of the most exciting players to ever grace the football field. In a sport that features some of the world's most gifted athletes, Johnson and his blazing speed still managed to stand out. It seemed like every week he would break a long run and leave defenders and fans alike scratching their heads. They wondered how in the world could he move that quickly. One of these runs came back when he played for the Tennessee Titans during a divisional matchup with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They ran a basic pitch play and Johnson simply burned the entire Jags defense for a 52-yard touchdown. As shocked as the Jaguars players looked, Gus Johnson, who was commentating that day, seemed equally surprised as he exclaimed, "He's got getting away from the cop speed."
Watch out! He's got getting away from the top speed. Touchdown!
Big yikes. I think he meant no harm by it, maybe, but still, there had to be a better analogy he could have used for that one. Number 4, who had a worse week than Al Michaels? Pretty much everyone has had an experience with an elderly person who just is not up with the times. And as a result, well, they say something that is completely inappropriate. They usually don't mean any harm, but that doesn't change the fact that they have wildly offended someone. Unfortunately for Al Michaels, he's getting up there in years, and his day of reckoning came in a very public way. During a nationally televised game, Michaels said that the Giants were coming off a worse week than Harvey Weinstein, the notorious scumbag who was facing trial for a slew of despicable charges.
Giants are coming off a worse week than Harvey Weinstein, and they're up by 14 points.
Not only was the comment totally out of place and undoubtedly offended thousands of people, it was just awkward. No shocker that the producer got in his ear and had him apologize just minutes later. This helped soften the blowback, but yeah, this was a rough look for the veteran broadcaster. Number 3 might be a good time for a fact check. One of the most tried and true staples of color commentary is telling anecdotes about two things: what NFL players do with the money from their massive contracts, and their relationships with their families. Chris Collinsworth took a hack at hitting both tropes in one fell swoop, and let's just say he missed horribly. He was calling a Dallas Cowboys game and started rambling about how Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott used his money to buy his mom a house. A lovely story, really, it was. The only problem, Dak's mom tragically passed away from colon cancer in 2013.
I play for free. He got his mom a house, he's happy. He said sponsorships pay for a few other things.
Collinsworth was not even close, and Twitter quickly let him know about it. And rightfully so. This was a pretty brutal mix-up. Fortunately, someone in production was able to get a fact check his way rather quickly, and he issued an apology to Prescott. Still, this was a very cringeworthy mistake. You have to imagine that whoever fact-checks Collinsworth's talking points before the broadcast ended up getting a very serious talking to. That is, if the person in question still has a job. Number 2, all of the Saquon comparisons. There are a few ex-players who have earned the "he who shall not be named" honors in professional football for a variety of reasons, most of them being for despicable off-the-field actions. One of these men is ironically one of the most infamous NFL players of all time, Orenthal James Simpson, better known as OJ or the Juice. During his prime, Simpson was one of the most charismatic, beloved figures in the entire country, let alone just football. He was an amazing running back and had a personality that was tragically magnetic. But just as impressive as his peak was, his fall from grace was equally insane. Simpson was part of one of the most infamous trials of all time, and for better or worse, he will always be a prominent figure in American culture. That being said, the NFL has distanced itself from Simpson for obvious reasons, which makes it all the more surprising that Jason Witten decided to compare Giants star running back Saquon Barkley to Simpson while he was breaking down his tape.
All the great running backs, and I would certainly put Barkley in there, that never got to a Super Bowl. O.J. Simpson, Eric Dickerson, LaDainian Tomlinson.
Twitter was rightfully floored by Witten's choice to do so. There are some similarities to the way the two men played football. I mean, maybe. But there are a plethora of amazing running backs throughout NFL history that he probably should have considered referencing first. Number 1, was the call too big for him? Without any hyperbole, being a kicker could be the most stressful position in all of sports. Obviously, they don't have as much responsibility as a quarterback, and they only trot onto the field a handful of times a game. But the amount of pressure they are under to succeed is unmatched. It isn't just the insane amount of pressure that they're under, but the stigma that surrounds kickers in football. I mean, if the kicker misses an important field goal, not only will he have to face the rage of an entire fan base, but his job is almost always at risk. A couple of missed kicks, and next thing you know, it's back to slinging insurance. They are human beings after all. Well, the Monday Night Football crew did not seem to have very much sympathy for San Francisco 49ers rookie kicker Chase McLaughlin when he shanked the daylights out of a potential game-winning 47-yard field goal.
Oh, he punched at it, and it had no chance at all. The moment was too big.
I remember watching this, and I just buried my face in my hands. I felt so bad, especially because the 49ers were undefeated. This was his time to shine, and he didn't. He did not shine. I understand Joe Tessitore was trying to save with the call, but McLaughlin drilled an even further field goal to send the game into overtime in the first place. And he still brutalized him on national television, claiming the moment was too big for him. I mean, again, I get what he was saying. The moment was just too big, and he was nervous and whatever. I get it. But just like, maybe the moment was too big for Joe. So Joe, next time, just, think about what you're saying. You still have a job, I'm sure, so. Which of these commentators do you think would like to take their comments back the most? Join me in the comment section below. Make sure to follow myself and TPS on social media. We post great content all the time. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, everything. We got it all. Go check it out. If you like this video, give it a like. It takes one click. Smash that like button below. I hate saying that, but you know what? Smash it. Literally smash it. Like, hit it. Subscribe to TPS because we post videos all the time. New videos all the time. Of course, thank you so much for watching. I'm Jason Biondo. I'll see you next time.
My knee.